Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and in between, and welcome to another episode of Maths with Hamblin with your beautiful host, Hamblin. And today, my boys, we're going to learn the third method for solving quadratics, definitely the most powerful method. And it's secretly the second method, completing the square in disguise. Today, we're going to derive the quadratic formula, which, so beautiful. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so my friends, the first thing we're going to start with to begin our derivation, I'm going to write out a general quadratic formula. So we've got some number a times x squared plus some number b times x plus some number c, a, b, and c all being any real number we choose. And how we're going to do this is we're just going to do completing the square on this boy, because we know completing the square will work every time. So we can end up with a general expression for x, and we can just plug in a, b, and c as we choose. So if you remember, we've got a non-zero a here, and we don't know if a is equal to 1 or not, so we're going to do completing the square strategy like last time. We're going to divide everything by a first. So if we divide everything by a, we're going to be left with x squared plus b over a times x plus c over a. And that, well, 0 divided by a on this side, that's still 0. Okay, my boys, now it's time for the hard part. We're going to complete the square on this thing. Now, if you recall, if we expand x plus half of this plus b over 2a squared, that's going to be x squared, okay, we're going to have to use our brains for this one, plus 2 times this times that. So 2 times this times that, well, that's going to cancel with this 2, and we're just going to get plus b over ax. Exact match for what we've got here, but we're also going to get a straggling plus this thing squared, plus b over 2a, all of that squared. Could barely fit that. Yes, all of that squared. Right, so as you recall, if we want to take this thing and convert it to a nice lovely single bracket squared here, all we have to do is add on this term, and then this thing can be struck on to this. So let's do that, shall we? If I add this on both sides, we're going to get x squared plus b over a x, and then I've added on this thing, which I'm going to simplify to b squared over 4a squared. Okie dokie. And then so we've still got the plus c over a, and since I've added b squared over 4a squared to both sides, 0 plus b squared over 4a squared is just, well, b squared over 4a squared. Okay, right, now that looks pretty terrible, but remember, all we've done here, I've just added this thing onto both sides, so we then can crush this bit down here into this, because see, this and this exactly match. So this part here is exactly equal to x plus b over 2a squared, and then I'm going to subtract this c over a on both sides, and then we get plus b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. So remember, this is all very intimidating. All we did was set up a general quadratic equation, divide by a, and then complete the square, and then we're left with this equation on the bottom here. And now I'm going to rub this off, and we'll continue. Okay, so my boys, before I continue going with this, I think I'll just clarify a little thing. I mentioned I halved b over a to get this number here, which, remember, b over a was our x coefficient, and that might have confused you. All I did was take b over a and multiply it by a half, so we get b over 2a. I realised I went over that a bit quick, but I hope that's fine, my boys. But anyway, continuing from this step where we've completed the square and moved over all these straggling constants over to this side, we're pretty much done, right? We could just take the square root, and then we can subtract b over 2a, and then we've got x. We've got our general quadratic formula, but there's some nice little simplification we can do first. Notice we can combine these two fractions into just one. If we get a common denominator, 4a squared, we can just take 4a on the bottom, multiply by 4a on the top, and then we'll get our common denominator, and that equals, well, we've got something over 4a squared. Well, that's going to be b squared minus 4ac. Sound familiar, my boys? b squared minus 4ac? Right, and then we can just take the square root of this guy. So if we take the square root on both sides, this square root and this squared will cancel out for obvious reasons. And now let's be careful about this. when we take the square root on this side, because we want to get all the answers possible, we want to take the positive and the negative square root, remembering that the square root of a number can be a positive answer or a negative answer. If you're confused about that, watch the last video. Right, so if we take the square root of this boy, remembering to take, oh well, it could be positive or negative, we're going to get square root of b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay, but there's a little bit of simplification we can do. Just a little bit first. This square root of, first of all, we can break this up into plus minus root b squared minus 4ac over plus minus root 4a squared. And since we've got this plus minus on the top, we can get rid of this plus minus on the bottom. And the square root of 4a squared, well, that's just 2a all squared. So we take the square root, we're going to get 2a. So this equals plus minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Right? It's getting really familiar now, deja vu, am I right? And then we can just subtract this b over 2a on both sides. And then we've got finally x equals negative b over 2a plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the last thing to do, mi amigos, is to combine this fraction here because we've got a common denominator. So finally, we get that x equals minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And there's the lovely, familiar quadratic formula you know and love. I think it's really pretty, if you ask me. And there you go. That is how you derive it. The ancient Babylonians derived it a long time ago. And so now you know how to derive it as well. It probably came across as very mysterious and scary when you first learned it, but really it's literally just completing the square but done in general. So you wind up with an expression for x, for a, b and c coefficients. So how you can use this formula, you've just got any old quadratic, you can plug in the values for a, b and c, and boom, you've got your answers for x. It's just that easy. And there you go. There it is. There's the derivation of the quadratic formula. I was so looking forward to this video. I love this. It's so easy to understand, and it just clears up so much probably confusion you had. Like, what is this formula? Why does it work that you learned at GCSE? Well, now you're an AS student, my friend. You're clever enough to understand this. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope that cleared up any kind of confusion you had before or helped you in any way. Thanks for watching, my boys, and I'll see you in the next one.